Christ according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
We thank you, O God, for the treasure of your word. We ask that it may guide our lives. The Book of Common Prayer instructs priests to regularly remind parishioners of the importance of having a will. So, what better time to do that than in connection with today's gospel, in which one character has come to dispute his inheritance, and another character of means is planning ahead. By creating a will, it's possible to plan for that inevitable time when we will pass from this life. We've all worked hard for what we have, but unlike the fellow in the parable, we care about other people in our lives. We can also make a difference in causes and institutions that are important to us by remembering them in our wills. And I don't hesitate today to mention that St. John the Baptist Church could benefit from being included as one of the beneficiaries in your will. It's been my experience that when there is an inheritance, it can bring out the worst in families. When my wife's father died a few years ago with no will, he had very little in the way of worldly goods. But the day after the funeral, 9 siblings gathered in his home to decide who got what. And the youngest son symbolized the spirit of the occasion by arriving wearing an army helmet. The fellow in today's parable has benefited from God's gifts of sunshine and rain so that his crops have produced abundantly. He has an unexpectedly good harvest. We might call it a windfall. But as we heard, he gives no thought to God in thanks for what he's been given. He just thinks of himself. He even talks to himself. He could show gratitude to God by sharing some of that excess with neighbors who might not have been so well off. But no, he forgets that he should love God with his whole heart, his whole mind, his whole strength, and that he should love his neighbor as himself. His timing is terrible too. God reveals to him that he's going to die that very night and then have no profit from all his planning. Now, keep in mind, that death is not a punishment that is meted out by God upon him. It's just that his time is up. how is this fellow going to be remembered? Well, as somebody who seems to think of nobody but himself, it's not likely that people are going to mourn his passing. And others are going to inherit the things that he has worked and planned for. The question, I suppose, for us is, how might we identify with today's parable? How might we benefit from a windfall? And what would that mean for us in our lives, both physical and spiritual? The Powerball lottery this week was up to nearly $500 million. Did you know that? Did you buy a ticket? Did you give any thought, or have you ever given thought to what you might do if you won a prize like that? Yeah. Did you talk to yourself about it? See, we do. See, the fact that we talk about things like that with ourselves really kind of signifies that we are in some ways very much like the fellow that Jesus calls a rich fool in today's gospel. We're not all that different. Now, we would like to think about the security that it provides and how we might end up being generous with that money. At least, look how much I would give away. That's what I would talk to myself about. So it's nice to dream about financial security, and it also feels good to be able to think of ourselves as generous people who would give away so much. But that's also a way of deceiving ourselves. See, in many ways, we are the same as that rich fool in the parable. We're talking to ourselves about how we would spend money that we don't have. We're talking to ourselves. Now, could this parable of Jesus lead us to believe that we should not have possessions, that we should not save for retirement or for the years ahead, that we should not enjoy the things of this world? See, I don't think that's what it's about at all. Remember that he's responding to the young man in the actual gospel who comes disputing what he's getting as an inheritance. It's all about greed. And greed means wanting more than our fair share of things at the expense of others who might be suffering, who might be homeless, who might be in need. See, greed is a kind of fear that can enter our lives, fear of not having enough. Somebody asked John D. Rockefeller, how much is enough? And his answer was, $1 more. It's always $1 more. So there's a kind of fear involved, and that yields grief and sorrow and worry. Now let me ask you, is there anybody here who worries about what's going to end first, your life or your money? I mean, that's kind of a bad way to put it, but it's what we think about, isn't it? See, we all want to have a little bit left over money to cushion ourselves in case of some kind of problem, some kind of need. And I really don't think that preparing for rainy days by setting aside some of our abundance is what's going to cause Jesus to call us fools. I think he'd say you're a fool if you don't do it. But what he's talking about today is this excessive, selfish desire to have it all, to want it for oneself. That's what he means by greed. Now, the other thing that's sort of in the background of this is that Jesus realizes we have other needs as well. We've got emotional needs, we've got mental needs, we've got spiritual needs, psychological needs. We also need a sense of purpose, and we also need acceptance and a way to share life with others. Wealth in itself cannot meet those needs, and greed certainly can hinder us from meeting those needs. You're all familiar with Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. The main character, Ebenezer Scrooge. That name has come to be synonymous with greed, isn't it? Scrooge. That character is faced with the same kind of decisions that all of us face. What am I going to do with the good things that God has given to me? And Scrooge goes through a conversion as a result of his experience that leads him to share his wealth with others. And he discovers that this leads to some unexpected benefits. Not only after he's dead, but also in this life. And those benefits are not only for other people, but it's for him as well. That's what Jesus is talking